Hello and welcome to MK Rants, the podcast where I, your host MK, take you on a magical journey through anime, manga, comics, and cartoons. Today's topic, Fruits Basket. Alright, so I finally gave to watch Fruits Basket, only because my friends, would keep reminding me that it exists. So, to those friends, y'all know who you are, go and watch Black Clover. But getting back to the point, the anime, to me at least, is a solid 6 out of 10. So if you don't want to hear me complain about it, just click off this video now. But it's a 6 out of 10. I would rather rewatch Kamisama Kiss or Toradora before rewatching Fruits Basket. And today I want to explore my emotions towards the series, because while it's good, it's not my favorite anime. So let's get into it. Okay, we're gonna talk about the romance now. And this is the longest and most complicated segment. This is due to my many opinions upon, witnessing the relationships in this show. For the sake of my sanity, I will be referring to the characters as zodiac animals they represent. It's also just meant to make the podcast easier to follow, minus the few select characters of Kyo, Toru, Machi, and a few of the others that I think is important to state their names. Alright? Alright. Okay, so very controversially, I'm not totally convinced about Kyo and Toru's relationship. I know that sounds stupid, but it's true. I feel like it wasn't too well established in the first few seasons, and by season 3 it felt rushed. While yes, it was a nice conclusion, by that I mean an expected conclusion, it left me with the feeling of being unfinished, or at least in the rough early stages of what could have led to a convincing romance. I found Yuki and Machi's relationship much better in the way that it was executed, even if it had less time to develop. I think it's important to note here that I've never read the manga or seen the original 2000s anime adaptation, so if it sounds like I'm a tad bit not too happy with the choices meaning this anime, I can't say if it's better in the manga or early anime, so please don't come for me in the comments. Where Yuki and Machi's relationship works is that they have personalities that can actually bounce off one another, especially in the point at which Yuki and Machi meet, and it's where Yuki is almost finished with his character arc. Bleh. So it becomes that So because of that, he becomes more receptive to emotions and is more willing to open up to others. Because of this, he learns about Machi and the demons she has to live with. Because of that, they are able to form a special and honest bond that was able to flourish into an honest-to-goodness relationship. I think my favorite moment with Machi and Yuki is after, Machi explains that perfection scares her. And so when, at the student council meeting, when they give Machi, the box of chalk, Yuki just, reaches over, without making a scene, breaks one. I think that was such a nice thing, and it was such a good character development moment. And I also appreciate how Yuki was, willing to tell Machi after he realizes that she likes Machi more than he thought he did. Kyo, to me at least while hitting people less and learning to accept his mistakes, doesn't really have the same visible openness as Yuki. I understand that their personalities are meant to clash, but I don't think it was executed in the best way. And I don't think that I think that at the end of the day, while Yuki developed, Kyo had some development, but it wasn't really too noticeable. And not only that, but Toru and Kyo's confession happened way into season 3. So the conclusion felt fine, but I think we could have at least needed a few more episodes dedicated to their confused feelings and then figuring out that if they want a relationship with one another and if that's what they truly want. I think what I mean here is that they confess halfway through season 3, and while it's fine, it really did put a damper on the way the rest of the season went, because season 3, as it is, already felt very rushed. And honestly, I don't know. I think the relationship just felt rushed, and it didn't really feel like it had time to develop emotionally, because it really did stay at a standstill the first 2 seasons with very slow development, and then season 3 it was just boom, couple. Now, on the other hand, I don't think Akito and Shigure belong in a relationship. The whole thing came out of nowhere, and I don't think that them being in a relationship would be really healthy or stable. I do understand that it's all because they changed and yada yada, but even if Akito changed as a person, Shigure hasn't really changed, minus the fact that he stopped tormenting his editor because he quit writing. And even if we want to go with the whole thing, they are they're no longer the same people they were. and that Akito wasn't their true self. And all that is good, but the way the anime paced itself causes romance to come very out of the blue, and it's not a good character building. Especially if they had to, develop the dragon and his, like, issues and, like, romantic life for several episodes. You know, and it's fine, but I'm gonna say it. My friend said that she kind of expected it, but honestly, I don't know how true that is for me. And I love a good romance, but it wasn't it. It really, really wasn't it for me, and it really put a damper in how, like, I saw, like, the rest of the series. And by that I mean this specific, the series, because I didn't see it, I didn't feel that tension. So I don't really think that's the best. Also, the age gaps and the age gap relationships in this show tend to be pretty big. For example, Rooster is in love with Toru's, like, blonde gangster friend. Rooster, I think, is 26, and Toru's friend is at best 18. Akito's 20, and Shigure is 28 by the time the manga wraps up. Yes, I had to Google that. Akito has no official age, but the anime made it 20. Both relationships have a total of an 8-year gap, and I'm not totally cool with that but I didn't write the manga or made the story, so I can't really complain, but it is a little bit uncomfortable when put into perspective. Akito and Shigure are fine because both are technically in their 20s, but Blonde and Rooster, like, the romance doesn't sit right with me. I understand Japan has very different views on relationship and, like, ages of consent, but personally, I don't feel okay with it. So, hi, editing me here. I completely forgot to mention Horse and Cow's relationship. I forget their names. They're escaping me at the moment, but I want to talk about it because and I wanted to explain kind of like why I didn't bring it up, and that was because I don't think their relationship gap is that bad. I think she's a graduating high school student, and he's a freshman in high school, so I guess it's like a 3-year age gap, which honestly isn't like the worst thing in the world, and especially compared to the other relationships in the series that they promote that are age gapped. I definitely do see it as like an okay, I'll let it slide because I don't think it's like gonna cause any problems, and I think that they also just like made sure to like explain kind of how their relationship grew better. They were like, oh, they were childhood friends and they were there to comfort each other and everything, and it made more sense to me. And also, coming from a Western perspective, like I said, Japan has different consent laws, and I'm not here to comment on Japan's consent law because that's definitely not something I should be doing on this anime channel, but it is something that I think it is worth looking up or researching on your own time, because it is very scary once you realize the consent law. But again, I think Horse and Cow are fine. I'm not gonna dock them points for it. But again, coming from my perspective, I try not to write large age gaps because it's just something that I think can get very tricky and it can be very dangerous. Just point blank, it can be very dangerous and it can be very harmful to kind of like instill that idea. But again, Fruits Basket is also made for a more mature audience, like teenage audiences and up, so I can definitely understand kind of why they decided to go with that. But again, I'm not gonna say that I support an age gap relationship of 8 years. I know if my friends got into an age gap that large, like coming off of like turning 18 and having a relationship with a guy who is 8 years older than them, I would definitely be concerned for their well-being. But again, that's just a Western perspective. So yeah, sorry to interrupt, but I will let you guys get back to your regularly scheduled program. You might find it strange that that I prefer the romance between Tomoe and Nanami from Kami-sama Kiss, but it's different from the romance in Fruits Basket because, well, yes, both are romances. Fruits Basket also has drama. Kami-sama Kiss is a supernatural romance. It's impossible to miss the fact that it's never gonna happen. The whole point of Kami-sama Kiss is not to be realistic. Editing me popping in again. So when I mean that Kami-sama Kiss's romance isn't supposed to be realistic, I mean that it's a romance between a girl who becomes a god of a shrine through some shenaniganery and a fox demon. I think that there has to be some suspension in disbelief, and that's kind of why I say that that romance is not, it's not realistic, because like it's such a convoluted story that it makes sense. And it's fun, and I think that, yeah, Fruits Basket, I get it. It's a romance, and it's also drama, but it definitely does have some more realistic elements. I know that I feel like a lot of people could probably relate to feeling like trapped because of family and stuff like that. So that's what I mean by Fruits Basket. It feels a little bit more realistic, or like it could happen, compared to Kami-sama Kiss and not being realistic. I hope I explained that well, but again, I think this should be the last you hear of editing me. So again, back to the regularly scheduled program. But Fruits Basket tackles like real world issues. It tackles like toxic family and like generational trauma, and, you know, toxic relationships, and learning to work through them. And while yes, Fruits Basket has the single supernatural element of the Zodiac, you could really overlook it if necessary. It could have just been a really good drama series if you figured out a way to not incorporate the animals. Sure, you could use animal-like symbolism, but it's really, but I don't really think that kind of like warrants a lot of what goes on. And also, the author, I think, of this, of like, you know, Fruits Basket, was trying to, you know, convey something that could easily happen in reality, and that is why those relationships bother me, because those relationships could happen in real life. Also, Nanami is a literal god of a shrine, and Tomoris are familiar, and not to mention that there's a literal Tengu, so please don't cover me in the comments. Okay, so I think I'm done with the romance now. Thank the universe, I can finally get that off my chest. Now it's time to talk about a lesser known point in the art, animation, and soundtrack. I normally don't talk about this when I talk about anime, but I do think it's worth taking a look at here. The animation is gorgeous, and the shots and lighting can be very pretty, and the backgrounds are just delightful. The characters are fluid and expressive, and the way they animate tears is super pretty. Personally, I think some of the best animated tears I've seen has to be Studio Ghibli films. I love the way they animate it and draw them is beautiful. I think my only complaint amongst like the character designs is that I can't really tell what animal they represent at a glance. It can get hard to tell them apart, especially in a group setting. It can be like a guessing game of sorts, especially if you don't know their personalities yet, because that really helps to tell which animals they represent. But only by a smidge. I'm also like framing this in the sense, like, if you're like a first time viewer of the series and your friends are like, oh, look at this guy, what? Look at this guy, oh my gosh, attractive, right? And you're like, well, he's supposed to be an animal, well, what animal is he? And then like, guess, and you're like, I don't know, he looks like a generic guy. Stylistically, I think it's very different from the original anime and manga. I don't really see any of the original like mangaka style. I think that's a shame because it loses a lot of its visual flair that separates it from other anime, especially in the shoujo category, because shoujo, while having a lot of like a lot of similar looking like skeletons, Fruits Basket like definitely does have like an iconic style, while looking a little bit derpy in retrospect is a really, really pretty thing. I say derpy, not talking about the manga, but like I've seen screenshots from the original like 2000s anime, and it looks a bit rough, I'm not gonna lie. And even if you don't like the original style, you have to admit that it does, like, that it doesn't even look like they tried to replicate somewhat like made the original like manga and anime so memorable. And again, while it's fine, I don't think it was like the best choice from a marketing standpoint, especially because I only watched the remake. So I would have preferred to, you know, interact with the version that had a lot of like the original personality and a lot of the original art style. And I get it was 2019 when this like reboot came out, but I still think it's worth like noting. The animation was gorgeous, however, and I still prefer like Violet Evergarden when it comes to like story, like animation, art and story. But other than that, I'd say that the art was pretty good on this. I also Violet Evergarden is like my top tier for like any anime like ever. So keep in mind when I say Fruits Basket is pretty, I also say a lot of anime are pretty, and I watch a lot of shonen anime technically, so I've seen anime that doesn't look the best, but it's still worth noting. I think that the pacing for season 3 was also like really bad in like the remake. I'm gonna blame the pandemic for a big part of what caused this, however. And again, I haven't read the manga, so I can't really say that the pacing is better. Normally, I wouldn't like make this like up like a segment in a segment, but all the openings and endings, like minus one, sucked really badly. And the soundtrack, for me at least, in the anime wasn't that memorable either. And I watched a lot of anime, so I'd say that my favorite tracks are Inuyasha and JoJo Part 2. Violet Evergarden is also awesome. They are memorable, and even if you have a favorite like part of like the soundtrack, you can still listen to any of them and still be like satisfied with it. Aside from the soft piano and most like emotional scenes, nothing really sticks out compared to the rest of the soundtrack in Fruits Basket, sounding super similar. I think that having a distinction in the soundtrack is important because it helps the audience recognize when certain scenes have emotional and character value, or if a certain character is just, you know, going around on adventures, or if a silly goofy moment is coming up. Think Joseph's theme or the Pillarman theme, you know, for reference. Fruits Basket, to me at the very least, doesn't really have that. It doesn't have like flair in its soundtrack, and I think that's a really missed opportunity that could have been elaborated on better. Alright, so now it's time for my final thoughts. I know I did, and this is like the most, probably like the, I know I sounded like I was making a lot of complaints, but genuinely, this show is good. It's, like I said earlier, it's a solid 6 out of 10, and I would recommend it if you're looking for like a gateway to like the shoujo genre. I might watch the original anime to see if like the pacing's good. I don't know if it's completed, technically speaking, but I would really hope, because if I'm gonna waste my time on it, I better do it right. So going into my final thoughts, like I said earlier, the best ship was like the monkey and the editor lady. Freaking awesome pair. Hashtag ship it. I forgot that Yuki and the snake were related, and I forgot that the snake even existed until he showed up like halfway through season 3. What happened to like the bunny? He was so tall. He was gone for like 3 episodes and then just comes back like a pillar. Like, he's tall. I don't understand what happened. I have not seen the movie yet, and I don't plan to watch like the movie yet unless my friends make me, or Hulu adds it to like their animes that I can watch. Currently I'm watching like Yu Yu Hakusho. Also, I don't really know what the movie's about. I think that it's about Toru's parents, but I'm not really I don't think I'm gonna watch it. It didn't pique my interest. Honestly, it took a while to get through like Fruits Basket as a whole. So that was that. So I'm just not gonna watch the movie. Hi, so editing me again. The reason why this video took so long was because my desk has been claimed by family members, so I have not been able to edit for a while. Also, I've just been very busy in my personal life. I have stuff going on, so that's also a big chunk of why I think I've been gone so long. But this is what I came back with. I think I wrote this maybe around like 3-4 months ago. I recorded this like 3-4 months ago. And it was a process, but it's done, and I'm also working on Sodalite. My Instagram will be linked in the description along with Sodalite. I'm currently trying to hopefully get a thing out, or a new chapter out, or a couple pages out by maybe Christmas. I'm hoping, but again, I've been procrastinating on it because I have to draw a ton of books. But yeah, that explains why I've been gone so long, so thank you all so much for watching. Hope you guys have an amazing evening. Bye-bye!